Good morning, everybody. My name is Keith Gordon, and I'm the Senior Research Officer of the Canadian Council of the Blind, and I'm going to be your moderator today. Welcome to our conference on the role of artificial intelligence in vision health. In the spirit of reconciliation, those gathered here with us recognize that our work here today takes place on the unceded, traditional, and current territories of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe nations. The Canadian Council of the Blind honors all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We acknowledge their valuable past and present contributions to this land that their culture and presence have nurtured and continue to nurture. We are committed to a renewed nation-to-nation relationship with Indigenous peoples across the whole of Canada, Turtle Island, based on recognition of rights, respect, cooperation, and partnership. Thank you, Miigwech. I'd like to introduce now Jim Tokos, President of Canadian Council of the Blind, who has a few words of welcome.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our 2024 Vision Conference. I just wanted to say that we're so thrilled to have so many of you here who have always been great supports of ours. And so on behalf of our National Board of Directors, our members across Canada, our staff, I would just like to welcome everyone to this morning's activities, and also in sharing with us that we are turning 80 years old this year. So, and semicolon, as we continue to change what it means to be blind. Thank you for being here, and enjoy the morning.
Thank you very much, Jim. And before we move into the meeting, we'd like to remember one of the long-standing stalwart members of the Canadian Council of the Blind who passed away last week. His name is Michael Hayes. It is with sadness and our deepest sympathies that we announce the peaceful passing of a true friend of the CCB. Michael Hayes passed away on Monday, May the 6th, 2024, at the age of 76. Michael will be best remembered by the Council as a great blind curler who was a founding organizer of the CCB's annual Blind Curling Championship. The family will receive condolences on Friday, May the 31st, starting at 10 a.m. before funeral mass at 11 a.m. at Annunciation of Our Lord Church, 2412 Ogilvie Road, Ottawa. And before we get into the meeting proper, I would like to acknowledge all of our presenting sponsors: AbbVie, AMI, Apellis, Astellas, and I've learned how to distinguish between those two. Apellis and Astellas, thanks to both of you. Bausch & Lomb, Bayer, Biogen, Johnson & Johnson, Macumira, Roche, Specsavers, and Via Rail, who saved me on Saturday when we were stuck for 5 hours in Kingston. So, thanks to all of you. This meeting could not have happened without your support, and I say that sincerely. Thank you. Okay, there'll be a question and answer session at the end of the presentations. And I'd just like to say here, and I will repeat it later on, how to ask a question for those people online. For those present here, there will be microphones will be going around. So just grab a mic and ask a question. For those online, there are two options. You can click the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen, type in your question and click send, or you can email your question to info@ccbnational.net. That's info@ccbnational.net. And we hope there'll be lots of questions because we've got good time and we've got some really clued in people to answer them. It's not me. Okay. So moving on. Artificial intelligence is very much in the news these days. It's a bit of a cliche, but I will say it anyway. As new algorithms and uses for AI emerge almost on a daily basis. Today's speakers will provide a wide view of the potential use of AI in the field of vision health, focusing on technologies that are the most advanced and most likely to be implemented in the short term. By way of reinforcement of the level of interest in AI and vision health, I'd just like to take a minute to relate my experience from a couple of weeks ago. I was privileged to attend a Vision Scientist conference in Seattle. This annual conference, called the ARVO Conference, is the largest such annual conference in the world. There were over 11,000 attendees at this year's conference. By far the subject of greatest interest at this year's meeting was AI. AI was pervasive in almost every subject area of the meeting. There were 53 separate research presentations and 291 research posters, each reflecting a research study on some aspect of AI. That's a lot of AI research is involved in vision. I attended talks in which AI was used for early diagnosis of eye diseases, as well as many other aspects of ophthalmology, ranging from the use of AI in patient identification and surgical assistance, robot-assisted eye surgery. I mean, who would have thought you could ever have a robot do surgery in the eyes in such a small space? There were also a number of presentations on the use of AI in accessible technology. All this to say that the future of AI in the diagnosis, prevention, and treatment of eye disease is very bright, as is the use of AI in the development of accessible devices and associated apps that have the potential to greatly improve the devices currently used by people who are blind or partially sighted. All of this challenges our ability to keep up with this rapidly changing world. The speakers we've assembled here today are going to try and simplify all of this AI knowledge for those of us, like myself, who are not technology experts, so that hopefully by the end of the day today, we will have a much clearer understanding of the hope that AI brings to us all. And with that as background, I would like now to introduce our first speaker, Dr. Jutta Treviranus. Dr. Jutta Treviranus is the director of the Inclusive Design Research Center, the IDRC, and professor in the Faculty of Design at OCAD University in Toronto. Jutta established the IDRC in 1993 as the nexus of a growing global community that proactively works to ensure that our digitally transformed and globally connected society is designed inclusively. Dr. Treviranus also founded an innovative graduate program in inclusive design at OCAD University. She is credited with developing an inclusive co-design methodology that has been adopted by large enterprise companies such as Microsoft, as well as the public sector. As well as public sector organizations internationally. Jutta has coordinated many research networks focused on accessibility and inclusion with and by people with disabilities. Jutta was recognized for her work in AI by Women in AI with the AI for Good DEI AI Leader of the Year Award, as well as by Women in AI Ethics. She is the chair of the Accessible and Equitable Artificial Intelligence Standards Committee. I don't know when Jutta sleeps. and we are really privileged that she's taken the time to be with us. Dr. Treviranus will provide us with an overview of the different forms of AI, the risks and opportunities posed by the design of AI, and the emerging regulations relevant to people with disabilities and promising trends in AI. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Jutta Treviranus.
And apologies for that long bio. And thank you so much for having me back. I was on this podium about 2 years ago, so many of you will have heard some of what I've said before. But I also sort of feel like this is the good news side. I'm the cautionary side. So I'm going to start with when you ask, there's good news and there's bad news. I think I'm going to give, I guess not necessarily the bad news, but the cautions. So if we could get my slides up, that would be great. Good. So I've titled my talk, The Opportunities and Risks of AI. And I've been tasked with explaining something that many of you have heard many, many things about, especially the dystopian and utopian talks about the potential of AI and how AI is going to change our world. At its very, very basic, AI is a statistical reasoning machine that feeds on data. You can think of it as a power tool. It's like moving from a hammer and a chisel with the way that we do things to a power motor. It can do things that we've done before, but more efficiently, accurately, and consistently. It's mechanizing, accelerating, amplifying, and automating existing patterns. So rather than having one person working on something, you have an army of neurons that are working in parallel. It is wonderful at statistically finding or producing the typical, popular, normative, predictable, and statistically average. And when people talk about all the different forms of AI, you've probably heard about deep learning, machine learning, neural networks, etc. I like to simplify it into 3 generations of AI. I've been working in AI since the 80s, and most of you have probably only heard of AI since ChatGPT emerged. But it is very pervasively deployed, and it has been deployed for decades. The first generation of AI, what we said to the AI was, here are the rules, follow them literally and accurately. And during the 80s or 90s, you probably heard of how machines and robots and AI took things very literally and did very silly things because it didn't understand the nuance of what you wanted it to do. The second generation of AI, we told it, here's available data, use statistical reasoning to optimize the selected metrics. So we said, this is the optimal, try to match it. And this type of AI is very, very pervasively deployed. It's making all sorts of decisions about our lives. And it's called the automated decision systems or the AI guidance tools that are integrated into your browsers. The third generation of AI, which is where everybody seemed to wake up to the existence of AI, we said, here's all the data we have, you figure it out, make new connections, and determine weights based on past relationships and possible combinations. And my concern with AI is about disability. And there's one thing that you need to understand about disability and data. Over my more than 40 years in the field, I've been collecting data points from everybody. I ask everybody, what do you need to thrive? What do you need to participate fully in society? And the only way that, as the data scientists will probably tell you, because it's a very diverse set of requirements and it relates to all sorts of facets of our lives, the only way I can plot it is on what I call, or what is a high-dimensional multivariate scatter plot that I've simplified and termed the human starburst. And those of you that are teachers know it as the bell curve. Other data scientists knows it as the normal distribution. For the business people here within the audience, it's what the pattern that Pareto noticed when he created the 80-20 rule. Because 20% of the space is taken up by 80% of the needs, and they're right in the middle. And the remaining 80% of the space is where the remaining 20% of the needs are distributed. And they go further and further apart. If you look at the middle, the dots are very similar to each other, and that means that they're very alike. And at the periphery, the dots are further apart, meaning they're very different. And because of this pattern that we notice in all sorts of things in our lives, whatever is designed out there, whether it's services, products, transportation, employment, tends to work if your needs are in that middle section. They become difficult to use as you move away from that middle, and they don't work as you move out to the outer edge. So if you think about the needs that you have that are very diverse from the average, you'll note that those are the things that break down. AI does the same thing, but of course it is amplifying, accelerating, and automating that pattern. So all of the determinations made by AI are right for things that are within the average. They become inaccurate as you move away from the average, and they're wrong as you get to the periphery. And think about that when we talk about diagnostics and assessment. And this pattern, of course, is a pervasive pattern that's been here well before AI. It echoes and ripples through every part of our life, whether it's the design that is either a fit or a misfit, the products that most people are using that are becoming more available, reliable, functional, and cost, especially with Moore's law, but they're not as good if you, say, have an intersectional barrier or many disabilities at the same time. Knowledge, because we're using statistical reasoning to determine what is true and what is right, or what is science, what is good evidence. We have a lot of knowledge regarding that middle. We have very little knowledge out at the outer edge. Education, we're creating standardized learners ranked in a single file on a bell curve, the same pattern. Work, we're creating replaceable workers that meet a particular standardized pattern. Democracy, if we reduce democracy to one person, one vote, then the trivial needs of the many will outweigh the critical needs of the few. But of course, one of the things about prediction and statistical reasoning, the prediction that we know has the greatest probability is that you or someone you love will have a disability before you die, which is the other definite, completely accurate prediction. And the unfortunate thing about design is that most people are only designing for that middle, but if we design for the entire range, then everyone has room for change and growth, and we are living in a very unpredictable time, and so there will be need for that adaptation. And out there, at the outer edge, is where we find the greatest innovation, and where we are able to detect the weak signals of crises to come. It isn't the complacent middle that needs things to change. So there's good news and there's bad news about AI. And if you have a disability, the opportunities and risks are at the extremes. There's amazingly wonderful, life-changing, miraculous news about what AI can do, but there's also fairly scary stuff. And this side of the table is going to talk about all of the wonderful things. I'll touch on it very quickly. One of the things that happens as well is disability is frequently used as a poster child of AI. When people talk about, oh, wait a sec, do we really want to do this? People show, well, look at the wonderful things it's doing if you're blind. Look at the wonderful things it's doing if you require voice input. And so the data and AI developers are telling us to break things, to make mistakes, to push forward, because there's an economic imperative. The economy will die if we don't continue moving, or there are the geopolitical reasons. China will take over if we don't continue with AI. But there's something that we need to know about disability and technology, since it's being used as a poster child. For most people, technology makes things convenient. If you have a disability, technology makes things possible, is a saying that we frequently hear. And so if you have a disability, we rely upon technology to speak, read, write, learn, affect the world, navigate the world, eat, express love, remember, plan, breathe, and even live. Our relationship to technology by necessity is far more intimate. It is essential because we have no choice. It is what makes things possible. This relationship also makes us more vulnerable. We should not have to give our trust to an abusive partner, say. We are disproportionately vulnerable to the mistakes and therefore the breaking. And beyond guarding our homes, it is implanted in our brains and in our vital organs. And there are no lack of extreme opportunities. AI recognizes speech, gestures, patterns, finds a target object or pattern, can match or label objects, can remember forever and remind on time. And how many people, I see a lot of gray hairs here, need that memory tool. Sort possible paths and find the optimum, detect common mistakes and correct them. And it is doing wonders in mechanizing the formulaic. Everything from feeding machines to robots that serve, to some of the tools that we'll be hearing about, smart prosthetics, etc., and things that recognize our EEG patterns so that if we lose speech, we can continue to talk. And current AI, as Keith mentioned, is proliferating. We hear of a new AI tool all the time, whether it's image-to-text description like Be My Eye, Seeing AI, JAWS, Picture Smart AI, and Jason is going to talk a little bit about that. Real-time captioning, we're using probably that in, I'm not sure, but I'm assuming that that's being used in the teleconference right now. Transcribed glass, so the captioning comes to your glasses. Sound filtering, voice control, personal voice output, exoskeleton optimization, gesture control. Smart home systems, robotic assistance, memory and recall tools like Rewind AI, simplification and summation tools like Detangle AI, writing support like ChatGPT. How many of you here have used ChatGPT already? Okay, almost half of you. And of course, brain-computer interfaces. How many of you have seen the Neuralink news from regarding yes, okay, I see a lot of nods. And many more: assessment and diagnostic tools, monitoring and evaluation tools, training and configuration tools. But even in these systems, there is a bit of a fly in the ointment. There are risks of privacy breaches with inaccessible terms of service. How many of you read the terms of service before you click, okay, I agree? Nobody. And do you know who the data is being shared with and who else gets the data? There is surveillance and manipulation of the AT user and others. There's targeted advertising. There's stereotypical optimization metrics that sort of steer you in the direction of spending more money. There is homogenization. Many of you are probably using some prediction of what the likely next word is. How many times have you just accepted it rather than continuing with your own unique personal message that you wanted to write? And what happens there with that loss of differentiation, especially for kids in high school, where the normal is and the normative is really critical. And if everything becomes that homogenized, what happens if somebody doesn't have access to the tool? There are also inverse benefits because of those individuals right at the outer edge of that human scatter plot who need the systems the most. That's the people that it works the worst for. So if you're in a very poor environment and you're trying to use See My Eyes and you have all sorts of things or a language that it hasn't been trained on, it's going to work the worst. If you have a voice that's far from the average, then it's not going to work as well. And connectivity, of course, it is quite cheap initially, but the costs continue to go up. I won't talk about the power consumption and sustainability issues. And of course, if you're using a large language model like ChatGPT, there's hallucination because the system is designed to sound believable, but not to tell the truth. In fact, it doesn't know what the truth is. It's intended to, and it's trained to create believable bullshit. And that is the... And if you think about it, what data about disability have we fed AI? Ableist slurs, disabled people as inferior, unattractive, tragic victims, suffering, bad jokes about disability, and what is called benevolent ableism, or what people within the disability community have called inspiration porn. The hero, the person with a disability as a hero overcoming insurmountable obstacles. But even when we try to address that toxic material within AI, it tends to backfire. Captioning toxicity filters will prevent us at the university from teaching topics that are deemed to be toxic, so that the students relying on the captioning get the wrong information. There are instances where Instagram has canceled the accounts of people who have facial differences because it's deemed that their faces are toxic. And any mention of disability with sex is completely washed out or censored because there is some determination that disability and sex can't coexist. But all of that aside, there is a less known risk, and that is that AI is creating an infrastructure of statistical discrimination. And my first alarm to this, and those of you who were here 2 years ago already heard this story, so apologies. But back in 2013, I was asked to test a machine learning model that would guide a vehicle through an intersection, tell it to go straight, turn, or stop. And I decided to test it with an individual, a friend of mine who pushes her wheelchair backwards. And because it's quite unexpected what she does, and people in the intersection will often think she's lost control and push her back to the side of the intersection that she came from. But of course, all of the AI systems determined that she was not proceeding through the intersection and decided to go forward, and thereby they would have effectively run her over. All of the developers said, don't worry, these are immature machines, they don't have enough data about people in wheelchairs and intersections. Come back when we've trained them, when they're smarter. But the primary lesson I got from this is what happened next. What happened when those AI systems became smarter, better, more intelligent? They all decided to run my friend over with greater confidence. Because they were confident, given the data, that statistically someone in a wheelchair is going to move forward, not backwards. And this is where my alarm started. And what I figured out is that AI, while it does these wonderful, miraculous things, when it's finding, matching, sorting, labeling, measuring, optimizing, calculating, analyzing people and their behavior at scale, especially people and outlying or minority behavior, there's a problem. And people with disabilities tend to be the collateral damage, because AI in that form, when it's applied in that way, is propagating discrimination faster, more efficiently and accurately. And unfortunately, it's missed by AI ethics efforts. And to some extent, it points out an existential flaw. And one of the things that I frequently say is that one of the good things about AI is it puts a mirror to our existing conventions. And it gives us pause, a time to think about how do we, in fact, at the moment make decisions, and why are we training the AI to do it in the same way? Should we reconsider this? Because the AI is reducing diversity and denying complexity, and most of our conventions do that. And of course, the primary common element among disability is that you are different from the average or different from the norm. And it harms everybody, but because what we're doing is we're homogenizing towards a monoculture. And are there any biologists or botanists here in the audience? What happens to a monoculture when a single crisis comes? Monoculture tends to disappear. I mean, any Irish potato farmers here? So this particular automated decision system is pervasively deployed. It's already out there. It was there well before you became, or most of you became aware of AI. It's the EEOC, which is the Employment Equity Office something in the US, determined that it's used in over 92% of hiring tools. So any HR software, etc., already has AI embedded. It's trying to match optimal pattern of successful employees of the past. If you are someone with a disability, there's likely not have been someone that does things the way that you do in most businesses, and so it will screen you out. Academic admissions, medical calculators and triage tools, and we'll hear a little bit more about that. Policing and parole, immigration and refugee adjudication, tax auditing, your loans, your mortgages, the security flagging that happens to you at the airport is all uses AI. One thing I'll say about medical calculators and triage tools, especially during the pandemic, one of the things that we found is that there was an increase in iatrogenic death and illness where AI was used. Iatrogenic death and illness, most people probably here probably know what that means, that death and illness due to treatment rather than the illness. So what's happening at the moment is there is a bias toward the optimal pattern, which means bias against difference. And AI, as it's getting better or more accurate, like those automated vehicle engines that I talked about, is getting more discriminatory. And so what we're finding is that there's bad, unfair, inaccurate decisions, and people with disabilities tend to be subject to false flagging and suspicion systems. The CRA is auditing falsely many more people with disabilities than it did before, given that AI is being used, because most people that have a disability have an anomaly in the filing. At a community level, it's being used for evidence-based government investment, it's used to determine the political platform, public health decisions, urban planning, emergency preparedness, security measures. And those trivial things are happening as well, but if there are many trivial things happening to you with AI, then it's sort of like death by 1,000 cuts, because news coverage, products marketed, GPS routes, supply chain priority, design features selected, all of those will decide against you if you are not average. And one of the things that unfortunately has been happening since I started to be alarmed in 2013 is I've been monitoring the harm and incident databases, and it feels like an I told you so scenario. There's a disproportionate report of incidents and harms related to disability. Parents with disabilities falsely flagged as unfit, false positive tax audits, false positive security flagging, etc., etc. There are unfairly high insurance rates, deprioritization of information relevant to disability, and excluded from optimum filtering in employment and education. And the list goes on. Statistical reasoning as the means of making decisions does harm, despite the emphasis on evidence and science in our decision systems. Assuming that what we know about the majority applies to the minority does harm. And it's more than addressing the data gaps, which is what those AV vehicles were trying to do. It's more than removing the human bias from the algorithms or removing stereotypes from labels and proxies. One of the things that most AI ethics systems talk about is privacy protections. They're most concerned about privacy. But most people with disabilities have already bartered their privacy for essential services. If you have a choice of something that you depend upon versus giving away your data, you choose something you depend upon. And even if that isn't the case, anonymization at source, which is what privacy by design relies on, you can be re-identified if you're highly unique. If you're the only one who's in your neighborhood ordering a Be My Eyes, believe me, the data systems will know that you are the person who's blind. Differential privacy eliminates helpful data. This is another technique that's used where you remove the data point that would identify you uniquely from a data set. But what that means is that you're then removing the data that is needed to make the AI work for you. And what we need instead of privacy, and one of the things that I would encourage you to advocate for, is some way of recovering from a data breach, help for people who have their data abused or misused. And unfortunately, despite the emergence of a huge AI ethics industry, look it up, there is even a professional association of AI ethicists, and it is becoming a large training opportunity. There is statistical discrimination in AI ethics measures because they're looking at risk-benefit analysis or impact assessment, and those critical, really difficult issues that people with disability face are seen as insignificant when determining the metrics and thresholds because, of course, they're outliers and minorities. They're invisible in error testing. And the AI ethics tools the mechanized AI-based AI ethics tools tend to use cluster analysis to determine whether the treatment of a minority is worse off than the treatment of the average. But that depends upon a bounded cluster, and people with disabilities are more different from each other than the average person is from each other. And unlike women or race or gender or, sorry, I already said gender, or any of the other justice-seeking groups, disability doesn't have a data cluster, and many people don't self-identify. It's invisible in a risk-benefit framework. It's an anomaly, merely an anecdote. And so for that reason, very quickly, I'll tell you some of what we're doing to address this. First of all, how many of you have participated in a Menti or a Wordle thing where somebody asks a question and then you submit the word? Yeah, quite a few. Okay. And what happens is the most common words, or the majority words, go to the center and they grow in size, so everybody attends to them and they want to be like the most popular, because we have a popularity echo chamber at the moment, and so they grow in size. What we've done is we've reversed it. So the novel and unique words grow in size and come to the middle, so that we're looking at how do we get innovation. And that seems to be something that people understand. Oh, wow, yeah, why are we doing this like this? And what happens to the people that happen to have something highly unique? We're doing the same sort of thing for employment hiring tools, where rather than data exploitation, we're using data exploration. Meaning that when you filter through the thousands of applicants, we try to find the applicants that offer an alternative perspective, and that will increase the diversity within the organization or within the student population. And we're creating for those medical calculators and those medical applications of AI something called a trust meter, which tells the practitioner that the person in front of them is not well represented within the data set, so don't make a decision based on the AI tool for this person. Use your human judgment, because this is an outlying scenario. And we're doing things like creating new algorithms, one that we call our lawnmower of justice. And if you think of the three-dimensional bell curve or the Gaussian curve, we're basically mowing it down, meaning that we're not allowing more than a certain number of repeats of any data. So we're taking away the privilege of being like the average, such that the AI has to attend to the whole spectrum of data. And then we're also pushing the benefits of AI to where they're needed the most. And this is, we're using a large language model that for children who are non-speaking with cerebral palsy, and doing all of the things that the AI is not meant to do, teaching it an ideological or a symbol language, and trying to prime it, because one of the things that is emerging within AI is this personalization, making it work best for you. At the moment, what's happening within AI is if you're unlike the average and you're using a tool, you're swimming against, it's like swimming against a major stream. All of the data that comes from the whole population is going in the opposite direction. And so we're trying to prime the AI to attend to those outliers and small minorities. And then lastly, we're filling the regulatory vacuum. I'm creating for the Accessible Canada Act an accessible and equitable AI standard. And we are negotiating with the EU and the US to harmonize on this, because of course Canada is, despite the fact that AI began here, is a very small actor in the larger AI economy. And there we're looking at both accessibility of not just the consumer products, but also the tools used to develop and design AI. We're addressing statistical discrimination, cumulative harm, and ensuring that people with disabilities are educated about AI, and that people that are educated about AI learn about equitable and accessible AI, and that the AI learns from its mistakes. And so what we're hoping is that we can progress with AI at the speed of trust. And one of the things that I've said before, not just about AI, is that intelligence that works with the edge of our human scatterplot is better able to adapt to change and respond to the unexpected, detect risk, transfer to new contexts, results in greater dynamic resilience and longevity, will reduce disparity, and given the world we're in at the moment, may thereby hold the key to our survival. And I'd love to continue the conversation, but I'm going to now turn it over to my colleagues here in the positive table to tell us the wonderful things.
Thank you very much, Jutta. That was, wow. It's a bit depressing on the one hand, but on the other hand, I feel that we are all very privileged to have you out there advocating on behalf of the disability community. So thank you for everything you do, and thank you for this talk today, and outlining for us what risks we can face in the future as we look at AI from a disability perspective and an accessibility perspective. So thank you very much. So moving from the more negative, if I may put it that way, to the more positive, I'd like to introduce Dr. Delan Jinapriya. Dr. Jinapriya is an assistant professor at Queen's University. He's the director of the Queen's Glaucoma Fellowship Program, the medical director of the Galen Eye Center, and the medical director of Euclid Telehealth. He is an executive member of the Canadian Glaucoma Society, the past chair of the Canadian Ophthalmological Society's Skills Transfer courses, and he is a reviewer for the Canadian Journal of Ophthalmology, the Journal of Glaucoma, and he's a grant reviewer for the Canadian Glaucoma Research Council and the Canadian Institute of Health Research. I don't think Dr. Jinapriya gets much sleep either. So He serves as an advisor to Ontario Health's Health Technology Assessment Program, which helps determine the value of new technologies and whether they should be funded by Ontario's provincial health plan. He has been an invited speaker and presenter at the World Glaucoma Society, the American Society of Cataract and Refractive Surgery, the Association for Research in Vision and Ophthalmology, American Glaucoma Society, Canadian Ophthalmological Society, Canadian Glaucoma Society, and many international and national conferences and continuing medical education symposia. The next little bit to me says most about who Dr. Jinapriya is. He says he became a physician to make a daily contribution to the betterment of people's lives. After becoming an ophthalmologist, he made it his mission to reduce preventable vision loss. He has been trying to achieve this through providing a large volume of clinical care, being an educator of future ophthalmologists, glaucoma specialists, and non-ophthalmology healthcare workers, and by finding ways to improve the systems and processes of ophthalmic healthcare delivery to serve more people and save more vision. Dr. Jinapriya will describe the potential use of AI in the diagnosis of eye diseases based on his personal experience and research over the past several years. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Delan Jinapriya. Thank you.
Well, first, I'd really like to thank everybody for your attention, and I really want to thank Dr. Treviranus for that incredible talk, and it's very thought-provoking. I'm still a little dazed. But anyway, and thank you so much for the introduction. I really appreciate that. The topic I'm going to be talking about again is AI, a practical use, a practical application, just one application. There were probably about 30 applications that you listed off, and I'll just talk about one of them. I'm very grateful to the Canadian Council for the Blind because, it was very timely that in 2021 this particular document came out. And by that point in time, what the CCB had done was funded this work that was done by Deloitte Access Economics, and it essentially objectified or found evidence for what I, as a frontline worker who is trying to prevent vision loss, could feel viscerally. And that was that the amount of people with vision loss was really very challenging for our system to manage, right? And it felt as though there was a lot more that would be coming. And the reality was that, my lived experience combined with that objective evidence, really, I ended up taking a bit of a turn in my career and my perspective on how I wanted to address vision loss. I was always working at the back end. I was receiving people when they had the problems and trying to fix those problems. And instead, I realized we really need to be more at the front end to try and prevent this. So we obviously had a very thought-provoking talk, and I think hopefully there are questions that'll come out in the question and answer period that we can dive into that a little bit further. But I'm going to show you an example of how AI is being used in ophthalmology. But I think we first need to ask ourselves, why bother using AI in ophthalmology, right? Is it going to make a change in our approach? Is it worth doing, right? Because not all change is for the better. But if you do want to be better, you have to change. Okay, so I'm going to propose a couple of hypotheses here. The current cost to individuals living with vision loss and to society is very high. We can improve upon making more timely diagnoses, and Canadians are not entering the ocular healthcare ecosystem early enough. And that at least one of the reasons for this is that optometrists and ophthalmologists have a capacity issue. So this is the prevalence rate of vision loss globally, 6.43%. And in Canada, it's 5.7%. So as a first world nation, that isn't a whole lot better, right? 1 in 5 Canadians is living with one of macular degeneration, diabetes, or glaucoma. 3.7 million Canadians have diabetes. 1/3 of them are going to have diabetic retinopathy. 2.5 million Canadians have macular degeneration. 1.9 million Canadians have glaucoma, and 50% of them don't know that they have it. And this table here, which comes out of the document that was produced in 2022, really shows us that there's a significant number of Canadians who have not had an eye exam in at least 3 years, right? That's 20% of the population. And vision loss is very expensive to those who have vision loss, and it's very expensive to society. To put this into perspective, if you were to think about the annual cost of vision loss in Canada, and that's for people whose vision is below 20/40, just the population of people whose vision is below 20/40, is it 750 million, 1.5 billion, 3 billion, or 6 billion? It's 15.6 billion as a recurring annual cost once your vision drops below 20/40. Okay, and this does not take into account all the indirect costs, such as the increased rates of falls, the increased fracture rates, the depression, anxiety rates that are increased, the decreased economic productivity, and the increased cost of things like transportation and caregiver costs, and decreased life expectancy. These estimated costs are annually $17.4 billion. So, this is really important to me because it's very emotionally challenging to meet somebody and they've come to you hoping that their vision can be salvaged, and for you to tell them what you've lost, you're not getting back. It's also really challenging to have to take somebody's license away once your vision has gone below a certain level. And for many of these people, that license is attached to their independence. And it's also gut-wrenching when people tell you that they're moving out of their home that they lived in for decades because they can't risk taking another fall, and they need to move closer to a society that has an infrastructure for transportation so they don't feel like a burden to their family and friends. I think every Canadian should care about this because you're going to know somebody who has vision loss. With 1 in 5 people with those conditions, you're going to know somebody with vision loss. And we are all paying for our healthcare system with our tax dollars. So we should all care about this because it's a very expensive problem, right? And if we could just make a small dent in this, just a 10% dent, that would save the system every year at least $1.5 billion. Everybody in this room should care about this, right? If you're an eye care professional, well, society's looking to the eye care professionals for guidance on what to do for vision health. If you're somebody from industry, you should care about this because a significant portion of the population is not in the eye health ecosystem, and so they're not receiving the benefit of the medications or the innovations that your companies are producing. And finally, for anyone who has vision loss, you obviously know what it's like to live with vision loss, and you don't want somebody else to have to go through that. But everybody here, I'm obviously speaking a language that you all understand because you're here at a conference that is advocating for an improvement in how we deal with vision loss, right? There are too many Canadians that are not being diagnosed and treated early enough. And interestingly, it's all right here in the data. So, what I want you to notice here is that there are 2 spikes where the vision loss goes up. The first age category is age 5 to 9. And what you're seeing here is a refractive error problem. Okay, so this is when you need glasses. And if we identify these kids early enough, then there's no reason that they can't have great vision going forward, right? So timely diagnosis and provision of the glasses is important. The next spike is at the 55 to 59 age group. Okay, now what's the significance of this? This is the same, I'm just going to show you the data in the female population. It's the same, although it is actually higher, and it is statistically significantly higher, I think, than the male population. But what you need to notice there is if you're having vision problems, and this is mild vision loss. By the way, mild vision loss in this particular data is 2040 to 2060. To hold a license, you need 2050. So we're talking about flirting with losing your license. That's considered mild vision loss, okay? So to get mild vision loss, you have to have significant pathology. And that didn't happen overnight. it takes time for pathology to develop into symptoms, at least a decade. So we need to be looking at people at least a decade before this age category. I'm going to show you some pictures. This is a normal retina. Okay, this is a beautiful looking macula, great looking vessels, a beautiful looking optic nerve. This is advanced diabetic retinopathy. On your left is going to be normal, and on your right is advanced, dry, high-risk macular degeneration. On your left is a normal optic nerve, and on your right is an optic nerve that has atrophied, and this is in keeping with glaucoma. Now, the one thing that all of these three pathologies have in common that I've shown you is they all had really good vision. Okay? But I think anyone, even not being a practitioner, probably knows that even a little bit more pathology, and that person is going to dramatically have their vision decline. And we call this sitting at the edge of a cliff. Okay? So we really need to find people before they're at the edge of the cliff. This is Dave, and he's only 58. And Dave presented to his optometrist. Well, he was actually an optometrist because it wasn't his optometrist because he never went to an optometrist, okay? So he presented to an optometrist who then urgently referred him to me. And Dave's story is this, he's always had great vision. He never needed glasses. Then as he hit middle-aged, well, he just started increasing the font on his phone, increasing the font on his computer, then he got some cheaters. But more recently, he's noticed that his vision is just not quite as crisp as it used to be. Well, these are his nerves, and you have to take it from me that these nerves are incredibly cupped. There's very little nerve tissue left. And these are his visual fields. It should be all white. There's a lot of black there, which means that he's not seeing very much. But despite this, he's seeing 20/40 in the eye in your side on the left, and he's seeing 20/20 out of the one on the right. But you can tell that he's lost over 90% of his vision. So the take-home message here is good vision does not equal good ocular health. Okay? So to this point, what I've tried to highlight is that vision loss in Canada affects a lot of people, and it's an expensive problem for those with vision loss. It's an expensive problem to our healthcare system and to our society. There's a significant number of Canadians who are not in the ocular healthcare system, and ocular pathology takes a lot of time to develop. And if we can find it early enough, we can actually delay vision loss, and realistically, we can prevent a lot of vision loss. Now, how can we use AI in ophthalmic care? Okay, well, AI is actually pretty good at evaluating images, and ophthalmic diagnostics produces a lot of images. So, let's take a look at a practical integration of AI into ophthalmic care. What I'm showing you here is an electronic medical records. This is one of the medical records that we use. And I'm going to focus in on this particular section. What's happened here is we've integrated an AI tool into the electronic medical record. Okay? The column on the left-hand side, which has a Q above it, is quality. And it has already put into the medical record the quality of the image. So the green light indicates that this was a good quality image. The column beside that is the diagnosis. And so if there's a green, it indicates that none of the diagnoses that this particular AI looks for were found. And so in this particular case, it's indicating that these images have no pathology. Okay, and here's what the images actually look like. And so I would agree with that. The macula looks great, the vessels look good, there's no evidence of any blood vessel abnormalities, and the optic nerves look good. Now, if we want to get the report, we can click on this icon and it'll bring up the report. And here you can see the type of conditions that it was looking for. So it was looking for diabetic retinopathy, diabetic macular edema, it was looking for drusen. By AMD, they mean geographic atrophy from macular degeneration, and I was looking for glaucoma. Well, what about for actual pathology? So when you're looking at these discs, initially, they might not necessarily stand out per se, but the testing, the AI that is, did actually flag it as positive for glaucoma. So we did run some more advanced testing on it. We looked at the angle of the eye to make sure that it wasn't closed angle glaucoma. We looked at the ganglion cell layer, and we looked at the retinal nerve fiber layer. And you'll have to take my word for it that, this is suspicious actually for glaucoma. at the very least, we're following this person right now. Okay, so it was actually a pretty good call by the AI in this particular case. In this one here, the nerves actually do kind of stand out, but I didn't really think very much of the maculas. But the AI actually flagged, and if you can see the cautions there, so we actually dove further into that, and we actually, if you look at the report, it says that the macular degeneration and glaucoma are both positive. So in this case, we actually did run, again, the same rounds of testing, looking at the retinal nerve fiber layer for glaucoma, the ganglion cell layer for macular degeneration. And in this case, and we can dive into this because these are one of those outlier cases which perhaps, the AI, to your point, is better with the normative. But in all fairness, this is fair enough to be called as a glaucoma suspect. But what was interesting is certainly it was pretty obvious on the macular scans that there was macular degeneration. And here's diabetic retinopathy. In this case, we're going to see that it immediately calls this severe diabetic retinopathy, tells us that we should be referring this for some kind of treatment, and that's certainly the case. There are new blood vessels growing on this optic nerve head, which are in keeping with what we call proliferative diabetic retinopathy. And even the more subtle signs of diabetic retinopathy, it's pretty good at picking up. In the mid-periphery, I've put a circle around the abnormality in the vasculature that it identified, and it also did call it glaucoma, which, it's pretty sensitive for glaucoma. So how can we use AI to improve our current processes in ophthalmic care? Well, this is one example of a way in which we've integrated the AI into the EMR in a way that before you even look at the diagnostics, it's giving you some indication as to what you're looking at. Full disclosure, we have yet to fully use it in that way. Every bit of the images that we look at, we still have humans looking at them. Ophthalmologists are still looking at them, so we can dive into that a little later. Now, what are the impediments to getting ophthalmic care, right? And how could we maybe use AI in a way to overcome some of these impediments and improve our system? Well, there's cost to eye assessments. I'm not sure we'll get over that. There's a lack of understanding about the importance of regular eye exams. That's a different issue. Now, there's a number of practitioners that are not enough in our population. So whether it's optometrists and ophthalmologists combined, we're not going to be able to service the entire population. And to add to this, our newer generation of practitioners are not seeing as many patients as the older generations have. Okay? So we can, we have some levers we can pull here to improve our system. We can increase the number of optometrists and ophthalmologists in the system, bearing in mind that it takes at least 8 years to produce an optometrist and at least 13 years to produce an ophthalmologist. We can increase the productivity of each of the optometrists and ophthalmologists, so that's certainly an area that maybe AI can help us in. And we can screen more of the population and send those who really need help to the optometrists and the ophthalmologists. So that's also an area where AI can probably help us. When we look at the workflow of an optometrist and ophthalmologist, there's 3 main things that they're going to do, right? They're going to communicate with the patient. They're going to make clinical decisions based on the diagnostics that they've evaluated, and they're going to have actionable activity, whether that's starting or stopping or changing a drop, whether that's performing a procedure. So it's probably in area number 2 that the AI can really immediately help us, right? And you kind of saw that. If you trusted the AI enough and you saw your EMR pointing out all these green dots, you'd say, well, do I have to look at the diagnostics at all, or has the AI done that for me, right? So you could potentially save yourself several minutes per person for wherever you saw these green dots like this, and you'd certainly be looking at anything that was cautionary. That's one potential way that you could increase efficiency in a workflow. This is a program called Care One. This was designed by an ophthalmologist on the West Coast. It's been in existence for at least a decade now, and it services optometrists. And this particular platform, what you do is the optometry offices will upload their diagnostics into Care One, and Care One will utilize its proprietary AI and analyze all those diagnostics and tell you whether or not you have diabetic retinopathy, macular degeneration, or glaucoma in these particular cases, and then the optometrist can relay that back to the patients. So that's one way that it has improved, I suppose, the diagnostic capabilities of our front line for those who are part of that network. For Euclid Telehealth, which is the organization that I'm a part of, What we're using is a handheld camera as opposed to your more traditional cameras that's based on the left-hand side there, which are more desk-mounted. And this has made the team more mobile. So in this particular way, we're going after patients who are not already part of the ecosystem. So we're going into family doctors' offices and looking at patients who don't have optometrists or ophthalmologists, immigration centers, refugee centers, schools. So that's the way that we're actually approaching trying to get people into the system. And once you take that image, it's uploaded into the cloud, and it's in the cloud where we have the AI platform along with, you saw the EMR that we were using. And then we do teleophthalmology with the patients who actually have positive pathology as identified by the AI, but also by us, because we're looking at all the images. And finally, there's also something called point of use AI. Okay, and in this particular case, what you're seeing is a unit that takes the image and it actually has the AI right in the unit. So you don't need to upload that anywhere. It's going to give you the answer right then and there. Now, one of the advantages to this would be, and this is Orbis Canada who's going to be deploying this in Canada in rural sites where there are no optometrists or ophthalmologists, right? So the family doctors are going to have this unit, or there will be a nursing station that'll have this unit. And in theory, what would happen is that they would take the image, and for anybody who has diabetic retinopathy, well, now that's the person they're going to send down to see the optometrist or the ophthalmologist, okay? So why aren't more people using AI in ophthalmology or in ophthalmic care, right? What are the hurdles that we're facing? Well, one of them is fear and trust, right? So who is going to be that first person to unleash AI and not check the diagnostics themselves and trust the green dots, right? The tool's been in my hands for 3 years. I haven't done it yet, right? And maybe I should. Maybe if I was just looking at statistics, I see statistically, this thing's less wrong than, if you had a doctor who was right 99% of the time, you'd say that's pretty good. If they were right or wrong only 1 in 500 times, you'd say that's pretty good, right? 1 in 1,000 is pretty good. This AI is batting 1 in 3,000 for making a mistake, right? So it's actually performing pretty well in that regard. So, but there's still a trust factor, right? Then there's the Health Canada issue. It's not an issue at all. It's actually a good thing. But here's one of the problems. The AI is considered a medical device, and it has to therefore be approved by Health Canada. Some of the best AI programs are south of the border or in Europe, and they aren't willing to pay to get Health Canada approval because our market's too small. So we're not going to get access to those particular AI programs, okay? But at the same time, Health Canada does have a job to do, right? They are looking out for our best interests to make sure that our data stays as safe as it can stay. So that's one of the hurdles. And the last one is costs, right? Like, who is paying for this AI, right? Who's paying for that camera? Who's paying for the technician that's going to take the image, right? Who's paying for the AI program, whether it's a per use case, whether it's an annual subscription? Who's paying for that EMR? Who's paying for the cloud hosting? Where is all this money actually coming from, right? So to actually start up, you need a lot of money. To sustain this, somebody's got to be paying for it every time you see somebody. So that's a factor to consider. In the end, AI is a tool, okay? It's not the be-all and the end-all. It is a tool, and we have to figure out how to use this tool to our advantage. And, there's a need to improve the detection of vision-threatening conditions, right? And we need to do this if we're going to prevent the number of people with significant vision loss from increasing. And so, certainly, if we can deploy AI in a way that is screening more people, that would be very helpful. AI is a tool that is likely ready for use in ophthalmic care, right? It's going to require somebody to take that leap, and it's probably 3 of the organizations that I mentioned that are going to be the first ones to try and do it, but they're also the ones who are going to have to endure a lot of the backlash for the unforeseen challenges that are going to happen when we do this. It can very well, identify diabetic macular edema, diabetic retinopathy, macular degeneration. It's highly sensitive on glaucoma, probably overcalling it. Pro and con. In my hands, I don't mind that. I don't mind it being too sensitive and me saying, nah, it's not glaucoma. But what if you're counting on it? Then the problem is you're over-treating, right? How we're going to have our existing processes change remains to be seen. The only way that we're going to find out is to deploy it, to figure out the ripple effects, to iterate, and to keep on iterating till you get to a point where you have a new process. So that's where we currently are with this. So with that, I want to thank you for your attention, and I look forward to your questions later, but you're also welcome to email me if you have any, if you want to take it off. I guess it's online, technically. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jinapriya. Delan says if you email him, he will answer them personally. He won't get his chat bot to do it. First of all, there is a White Cane magazine on your tables in print. This issue of White Cane deals with the 80 years. There's a whole article on the 80 years of history of the Canadian Council of the Blind. Some of the technology that has emerged over that 80-year period, both in vision health, in ophthalmology, and in accessible devices. So I think you'll find the magazine very interesting. And if you want to get it online, there is a QR code, which is now up on the screen. And we're going to leave it on the screen for the break. You can come up and take a picture of the QR code, and that should enable you to access it online. I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Jason Fair. Jason is an assistive technology specialist at CIBC. That's not CNIB, although he did once work for CNIB. He works now for the Canadian Imperial Bank of Commerce, where he provides solutions and support for employees. With over 25 years of experience in the assistive technology industry, Jason is a leader in leveraging technology to empower individuals with vision loss. His work focuses on advocating for accessibility and implementing innovative solutions that enhance the lives of those who are blind or visually impaired. Jason will tell us how AI is already being used in accessible devices and will describe areas of current accessible device research using AI that we might expect in the future. What Jason won't tell you is that he has devised some AI apps himself, one of which will enable you to find the correct platform at Via Rail stations. Is it Via Rail stations?
No,
or
Go Transit.
Go Transit, sorry. Okay. Anyway, Jason, I'd like you to come to the podium and continue with the meeting. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone, for having me here. So as said, I currently work for CIBC. It's not what I'm here to talk to you about, but I'm also a passionate advocate for technology in all of its various forms for people with vision loss. I myself am totally blind, have been since birth, and I do a lot of volunteer work with Canadian Council of the Blind, get together with technology, etc. At one point, my bio on social media says if it has buttons and goes beep, I want one, and that is pretty much still describes me today. So I'm here to talk about some of the practical aspects of AI, and we've heard about some amazing things that are going on with the last couple of speakers. What I'm here to talk about is, in practical terms, what's going on to assist people like myself who are blind or partially sighted in related to AI. Now, it would be great if this topic wasn't changing every 5 minutes. It makes it really hard to design a presentation when things keep changing out from under me. But aside from that, I mean, things are changing at an extremely rapid pace. So I'm going to talk about sort of a bit of history around AI and specifically for people who are blind, what apps we've had access to in the past. I'm going to talk about and actually demonstrate some things that are currently available. And this is going to be a live demo, which I did test the stuff before I came here, but we all know how live demos work. So if things fall apart, it's not my fault. All right. So brief history of AI as related to blindness. So we've had access over the past several years to several technologies that had some sort of basic AI functionalities. Now I'm thinking about the initial versions of the Microsoft Seeing AI app, which was and is an app that will allow you to take pictures of objects, and it'll sort of describe. Well, it won't describe them to you. You can read text. You can read barcodes. It would provide some very basic scene descriptions. In its initial iteration, quite inaccurate usually, but that technology has vastly improved. And Seeing AI until very recently was only an iPhone app, and very recently it's become available on Android. Additionally, Google has a product called Google Lookout, which does very similar things, so object detection, text recognition, that sort of thing. So, other thing I wanted to talk about just briefly as far as image descriptions is Facebook. Now people often have a love-hate relationship with Facebook. But Facebook a few years ago attempted to add image descriptions. So if somebody uploaded a image to their timeline, it would attempt to describe the image to you if you were using assistive technology like VoiceOver on the iPhone and that sort of thing. And these image descriptions were, I'll give them an A for effort, is what I would say. So you'll get a description. Somebody will say, "Oh, I just took this amazing picture. Take a look at it," and the image description that comes up is, "Picture may contain person and tree." So not super useful. They have improved on that a little bit. Since then, and their image descriptions have gotten a fair bit better, partially because they are implementing their own AI models. So I wanted to just back up really quickly and just do a very quick explanation for anybody who doesn't know the technology that we typically use on a mobile device or a computer. Just going to make sure that doesn't. Sorry, just want to make sure my phone doesn't lock, so I'm going to put my passcode in and all that. Don't worry, I'll unplug so you don't have to hear my passcode. So typically, if somebody is blind and you use an iPhone or an Android phone, you're using a screen reader that's built into the phone. On iPhone, it's called VoiceOver. On Android, it's called TalkBack. And these are features that are built into pretty much every cell phone these days, certainly every iPhone, and I'd say most Android phones. And so this is technology that allows a blind person to completely use the phone independently using a touchscreen, which was back when it came out, when the iPhone 3GS came out. This is a big deal. This is the first touchscreen only device that a blind person could really operate. So I wanted to just give a really quick bit of background on that. Now, as far as sort of current developments in AI, and this is where we start getting into demos. When ChatGPT came out, or when OpenAI came out with ChatGPT and people really started using it, this really was, game-changing for people like myself who are totally blind. So for anybody who hasn't used it, ChatGPT is a large language model, and it presents itself like like a chatbot, like you're having a conversation with somebody, except it's not somebody, it's an AI. And you can go onto ChatGPT and you can type in questions and ask it about pretty much anything you want, and as Jutta was saying earlier, it will, if you're asking about something fairly common, it will probably come back with a correct answer. If it comes back with an incorrect answer, it's really sure about it. So you do have to do a little bit of fact checking sometimes. But one of the things that I would typically use initially, what I would use ChatGPT for, is asking for descriptions of visual concepts. So, as I said, I'm totally blind, and I've been totally blind since birth. So there are visual things that are in the world that I just haven't experienced. And so occasionally I might use ChatGPT to ask for details about some, I don't know, what does the CN Tower look like? And have it give me a visual description of the CN Tower. Or perfect example is we were here for a few days before this conference, and we were in Merrickville, which is a town just outside of Ottawa, and we were at a lock. So there's a part of the canal there, and there's a lock system. And so I was asking, GPT to describe a lock system and how it works, because I haven't, really been exposed to one. So things like that, it can be really useful for. The other thing, and this is a little more recent, but the other thing that AI has been amazing for is interpreting inaccessible documents. So I had some financial data from my, from my finances that I needed for tax reasons, and there were some documents that I was sent in PDFs. I have a love-hate relationship with PDFs, mostly the second one, and I had this data, and I tried to read it, and the tables were just a mess. The tables were just garbled, and I couldn't read them. And so I'm like, okay, I can either fight with the bank and get this accessible, or I can, which I will do, but I'm like, I need this data right now because I'm doing my taxes. So I uploaded it to actually it was ChatGPT, then one of the newer versions, and I said, can you please pull out the gain and loss table for these T5008s and give them to me in a table? And it did it. So it pulled out the data from the document that was inaccessible, it formatted in a really nice HTML table that I could access, and it gave me exactly the information that I wanted, quickly. So, and I've also used this for things like, sorry, I'm going to try to shut that up. Give me a second. Let's try that. Okay. All right. So accessing data that is not, typically not accessible, it can be very useful for. Obviously, there's some privacy concerns to think about there because you are uploading documents to a large language model, so you have to be a little careful about what you're sending. But in some cases, it's worth it, I think, depending what you're sending, to get access to the data. As Keith alluded to earlier, one of the things I've also used is getting access to data that might be a little trickier without something like ChatGPT. So, as Keith mentioned, I did create an app it's a website actually, for accessing platform information on the GO train. So if you're in Toronto, the GTA, and you need access to GO train, pretty easy to find times for trains, not that easy to find platforms. So they're visually on the monitors over your head, but I can't read those. So I built a website to get access to that data. I actually used GPT not even as much to help me code it, but to help me interpret some of the data that I was getting from Go Transit. And that's not a specifically visual thing. I mean, lots of people use ChatGPT to help with programming, but I think in this case, it was helping me interpret some data that I was getting from Go Transit that wasn't visually might have been apparent, but as I was reading it with my screen reader, it wasn't. So that's one use. Okay. So now we're getting into rich image descriptions. So when OpenAI came out with some of their new models a year or two ago. There's an app out there called Be My Eyes, and this is an app that's been around for a few years now, and it started off as an app to connect you with a volunteer, and you could connect with that volunteer and they would interpret, whatever they were seeing through your phone's camera. So you could use them to, what's the expiration date on this carton of milk, or, what color is this shirt, or, things like that. Things you might need visual assistance for. It's not a service where I would necessarily trust them to read anything confidential, because it's volunteers that are doing it, that are doing the interpreting, and it's not like they're not vetted in any way. Like anybody can be a volunteer. So I'm not necessarily going to use them, like I said, for reading my bank statements. But they added a feature called Be My AI. And the feature started off as being called Virtual Volunteer, and then they changed it. But it's now called Be My AI. And Be My AI is a system for reading or taking a picture of your environment and giving you a visual description of what's going on. And I use this all the time. In fact, I use this if I'm entering a new space. I use it. If I'm trying to read something off a paper or a box of something, I use it. It's incredibly useful. So here's where we get into the live demo piece, hoping this all doesn't fall over. So there's been a guy walking around taking pictures. So I don't imagine, does anybody really care if I take a picture of all you wonderful people? Okay. So I'm going to turn my speech back on.
Speech on.
Okay.
Cellular. Locate. Take picture. Button.
Okay. So we're going to take picture. Are people hearing that okay?
Yes.
All right. So I'm going to just hold the camera up a little bit, and we're going to take picture. Here we go.
Analyzing picture. Please wait.
Da, 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 da.
The picture shows take picture. Button.
Hang on.
The picture shows a large room with high ceilings and large windows that let in natural light. The room is filled with people sitting at round tables covered with blue tablecloths. The tables have items like water bottles, papers, and small flower arrangements. The attendees appear to be engaged in a meeting or conference. There is a camera on a tripod set up in the back of the room, and a person standing next to it. The floor has a decorative pattern, and there is a small dog lying on the floor near the right side of the image. The overall atmosphere seems formal and attentive.
That's good. Nobody's asleep. That's good. I was waiting for it to say there's a person with their head on the table. And so pretty amazing, right? Like this is like life-changing stuff. I didn't know there was a guy with a camera back there. Hi, camera guy. So there's lots of details there, and I can also I can also query the system. So, for example, if I go over here,
Take picture. Ask more. Button.
so I can say ask more.
Message. Text. Be my eyes. Message. Send message. Text field is empty. Character mode. Insertion pointed. Start.
Okay, so we're just going to do a dictation. Hopefully this should work with the audio. Tell me about the dog.
Insert a tell me about the dog.
Okay, so what this is doing is it's taking the existing image that I already uploaded, and I'm just querying it to get a bit more information.
Clear text. Send message. Button. Send. Please wait. Be My AI is writing a message. Be My AI. The dog is lying on the floor near the right side of the image. It appears to be a small, light-colored dog, possibly a service or guide dog. Given the context of the meeting and the presence of a visually impaired person in the room, the dog is lying down calmly, suggesting it is well-trained and accustomed to being in such environments.
Yeah, so there you go. So So that image is being interpreted by, actually it's being interpreted by ChatGPT's newest AI model, because Be My Eyes just switched over to the what's called GPT-4o or Omni. It's the image descriptions we got from the last model were quite good. These ones actually seem better. The last ones were really good, but these ones even seem a little bit more accurate. So like I said, I've used this in just all sorts of things. I was on a flight somewhere and I was taking pictures out the window and having it describe them. You can do things like, if you have just pictures, in your phone, just that you've taken or somebody else has taken and sent them to you. So like after this came out, I spent like 3 hours with friends going over old vacation photos that I was never able to access, right? So again, some pretty amazing stuff. So can somebody give me a quick time check?
Another 10 minutes.
Okay, perfect. So I want to move on to, and I know we're sort of flying through things here, and I'll be around through the Q&A, and I'll also be around, after and for the dinner. So if anybody, wants to ask me more, come find me. I'm happy to give my email address at the end too. So I want to talk a bit about where this is intersecting with wearable technologies. So the first thing I want to show folks is the Meta Ray-Ban smart glasses. So these are glasses, and I'll just hold them up. These are glasses that are made by Meta, which is the same company that's Facebook, same company makes who designs Facebook and Instagram and all that, the rest of that people love to love or love to hate. And these glasses have some AI built into them. It's not as good as what I just showed you, but it's also very new. It's using their own AI feature, but with these glasses, I can do very similar things to what I just did. So I can ask for a visual description of a space. I can ask it to read text. So if I'm holding a piece of paper, or if there's a sign in front of in front of the glasses, I can have it tell me what it sees. So we're going to try this. Now the glasses, the way these work is the glasses send audio through little speakers that are up kind of right above my ear. And so it's sort of directional. So you're not meant to hear them. So what I'm going to do is sort of, contort myself and put the microphone up to the up to my head, and so let you guys sort of hear what these are doing. These are also good for like just listening to audio because my ears aren't blocked. So if I'm using like a GPS app, for example, I can walk around and not have to worry about having a headphone stuck in my ear when I'm trying to navigate. So I'm just going to ask the glasses to describe what's in the room. You'll notice the description is much shorter, but I can query it for other details. But I just want to give you a quick idea what these are. Hey Meta, look and tell me what you see.
I can help with that kind of photo or request.
Oh, why not? Hang on. Hey Meta, look and tell me what you see.
I see a group of people sitting in chairs, facing the same direction.
Okay, so, again, and the one I asked for earlier was a bit more useful. It told me, a little bit more about the space. But I can query this, and I'm not going to do too much with it just because we don't have a ton of time left. But you are able to query it about the image. Can you describe the people? I think because it's Facebook and they are a little concerned about privacy, I can't ask a lot of detail about people. It'll just sort of refuse to give you things. I think because it doesn't want to store, facial images and that sort of thing. I think they've gotten a little bit touchy about that, possibly because they've gotten into some trouble about it. But these are, like I said, I've used them for reading text, that sort of thing. Some other wearable technologies there's a set of glasses that are actually coming out of Canada called the Celeste glasses, and these are, I should just say, these Meta glasses are about $350, give or take, so not insane. The price is not bad. Celeste glasses do very similar things. They use OpenAI, so a little more rich image descriptions. Again, a wearable glasses, and their price point is actually quite a bit lower, but they do have a monthly subscription attached to them. So you pay for the glasses and then you pay for a monthly subscription. The other one is called the Envision glasses, which again do text reading and image reading. Those are a lot more expensive because they are based on Google Glass technology, which is quite pricey. They range somewhere around 3,000. Don't quote me, but I think they're somewhere in the range of that. I honestly didn't have a chance to look it up exactly before I came, but I believe that is it. I want to touch really briefly on what's coming. So OpenAI just released, I was mentioning before, GPT-4 Omni, which is their newest model. This model integrates image, text, video, text, and images into one model. So what this is going to let you do is actually get real-time description of video. So there's some demos online. There's some YouTube demos that they just released, and one of them is a guy using Be My Eyes, which is not the version of Be My Eyes I have access to yet. But he's in London, and he's asking about, he's by like a duck pond, and he's asking what the ducks are doing, and it's actually describing to him in real time what's going on in the duck pond. And he hails a cab, and he asks it to tell him when the cab shows up. And it says, "Oh, I see a cab showing up now. It's however far away from you, however the distance was," and it sort of guides him to the entrance of the cab. And this is all in processing real time image data. So that is going to be again another jump forward when we get there. I think we're not far off. I think developers will get access to that technology. Well, some developers already have it, but the public for development is going to get access to that, I think, in 3 or 4 weeks. And I would expect we're going to start to see products based on that in a couple of months-ish. Other thing I want to touch on really briefly is this is all being sent to the cloud. So all of everything I've talked about so far, all of this data gets sent up to the cloud. And some people may not want that. We are not far off. In fact, it's available now. If you have a powerful enough PC, you can actually download a large language model or an image model to your PC and get these descriptions on your device and not have to go to the cloud. So again, you need a pretty beefy PC right now to do this, but it's becoming more and more efficient all the time. So we're not far off from a time when you're going to be able to upload, or you're going to be able to query a model, possibly even on your phone, that won't have to go out to the internet. It'll just have the data locally. The other technology I wanted to just talk about really fast, just because I didn't get to it, is JAWS, which is the screen reader for Windows that a lot of people use, has a new feature called Picture Smart. And this is the feature isn't new, but their AI integration is new. And what this allows you to do is, for example, let's say you're on an inaccessible website and you're tabbing through fields on the site and you don't know what fields you're in because nothing is labeled properly. You could take a screenshot, send it through AI and say, what are the fields on this page and what field am I focused on right now? And it will come back and give you an answer. So, not an excuse for sites not to be accessible, but if you run across one, it's some pretty useful technology. I've used it myself. So I think that's the whirlwind tour of AI from a blind person's perspective. Again, I'm around. I'm here for the QA. So feel free to ask any questions you need.
Vision is such a dominant sense for most of us. Our eyes feed us an endless stream of information. But it is somewhat different for me. I'm blind, so I've had to learn new skills and use workarounds to live my life without sight. I still think visually, but I have to build the images in my mind through other means. Today, though, I'm experiencing something new. I'm using OpenAI's newest model and voice-first interface to imagine the world through a conversation with an AI.
Nice sunglasses. They definitely add a cool factor.
Oh, thank you. What is in front of me at the moment?
You're looking at a beautiful sunny day by the River Thames in London. Right in front of you is the Tower Bridge, one of the most famous bridges in the world, with its majestic twin towers and blue suspension cables.
That's perfect. Can you tell me if the bridge is up or down at the moment?
The bridge is down at the moment.
As the AI is speaking, my mind is building a visual image. I'm now getting a real appreciation of the majesty and scale of some of London's sights as they're described to me. Tell me what you can see.
I can see the top of Big Ben peeking through the trees. It's got that classic neo-Gothic design with the recognizable clock faces on each of its four sides. It's such an iconic landmark, isn't it?
I can visualize the iconic sights that so many visitors come to London to see. Is the king in residence at the moment?
Yes. It looks like the king is in residence right now. The Royal Standard flag is flying above Buckingham Palace, which is the signal that the monarch is present. How exciting to be there while the king is home.
Try and tell me exactly what they're doing right now, please.
Right now the ducks are gently gliding across the water. They're moving in a fairly relaxed manner, not in a hurry. Occasionally, one of them will dip its head under the water, probably looking for food, and then pop back up.
I even know when a taxi is coming with its orange light on. I think I'll hail it to get home.
Yes, I spotted one just now. It's heading your way on the left side of the road. Get ready to wave it down. Great job hailing that taxi. It looks like you're all set to go. That's a good dog right there, leading the way into the taxi. Safe travels.
Blind people around the world have rich and fulfilled lives, but it can be so much more difficult without sight. But my experience today has given me an overwhelming feeling of power and joy, and I'm so excited that other blind people around the world are soon going to have access to OpenAI's newest model through Be My Eyes. I think it's a bit like a driverless car. It feels like it's a lot to take in, but then the instant that you do take it in, it just becomes completely normal. And that normality is like so full of hope and optimism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Thank you very much, Jason. What a wonderful voyage you took us through there to see what the potential, what's happening now, and what the potential can be for the future. I'd like to move on to the question and answer session, and once again tell you how you can make a question. You can ask a question. Those of you in the audience there will be a circulating mic, and those of you online, please click the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen, type in your question and click send, or email your question to info@ccbnational.net. Okay, so here are some of the questions in no particular order. Okay, the first question is, will the use of AI in healthcare reduce the amount of human contact between patients and healthcare providers?
Okay, sure, I'll take that. I think that depends on the healthcare provider. I was just hearing about somebody mentioning that their experience was they get 1 minute to 90 seconds with their eye care provider. And there are others who are going to spend somewhere between 10 and 15 minutes. So that's a very big difference in terms of the type of interaction a person wants to have. So I think what can happen is that if you use AI in a way that there are certain people who might just say, look, I know I have a condition, I just need to be chronically checked, and I just want to know if I'm okay or not okay. Right? Am I stable or unstable? And I'm happy to get an email that tells me you're stable, we'll see you again in 6 months, we'll see you again in a year, see you again in 3 months, okay? And if you're happy with that, well, that frees up time then for the person who actually then needs to be seen or needs to be spoken with, and maybe actually needs a half an hour conversation. So I think it can go both ways. I've found it to be more opening, not that I'm using artificial intelligence, but the system we've got developed right now is such that I can spend more time on long-form conversations, because there are some people who are just receiving email reports and they're happy with that. That's what they want. They don't want to have an appointment time. They've got busy lives. They just want the answer. And if they want more information, they'll actually arrange that follow-up. So I think it really does, it's going to depend on the practitioner.
If I can just do, and I agree completely, and I think this is part of what we need to advocate for. It could be very positive in that it would give the person with human judgment more time to address more individuals who have difficult to diagnose or difficult to treat issues. One of the unfortunate things, though, that has happened in service industry is that because of the metrics that's used for measuring productivity, and of course insurance companies do that with funding medical practitioners, you're actually docked points for taking more care or taking more time. So in order to have a positive influence whereby we can spend more time with individuals who have difficult or unusual situations, we need to change how we fund, how we reward, how we measure productivity. The other thing we need to do is, one of the other ill effects of applying AI has been skill atrophy. So as we're depending upon the machine to do things, people are losing the skill that they need to actually address the more difficult situations. So the Canadian government is using AI for quite a number of white-collar activities, but as a result, there are no people that can actually then take over when it becomes a difficult situation, and the AI doesn't work very well. So in order for the positive end of that scenario to play out, we need to change how we measure productivity, how we reward people, and also we need to continue training individuals in the in treatment and in the more difficult atypical anomalies that occur.
Okay, I'll move on to the next question. Thank you very much. Okay, next question is, what is the danger of AI making incorrect decisions, and who is responsible when those decisions are made? Who is accountable? Who wants to take that first? That sounds like you have an
Yeah, well, this is. I definitely have an opinion there, and this is one of the issues because, of course, frequently AI is used to replace human judgment or human decisions, and then there is no accountability system set into place. People blame the AI. I think it's getting better, but certainly quite frequently when I was talking about harm and incident databases, most of those, it is very difficult to determine who is accountable here within an organization in making those decisions. So one of the regulatory instruments we're putting into place is that if AI is implemented, there has to be accountability within the organization. Of course, the organizations are frequently then saying, well, we didn't build the AI, we just bought it or we contracted it. And then it goes up the food chain to the original group, which is often also not known. So one of the issues with AI is it is using data, but most people use pre-trained AI. So if there's something really damaging and toxic up at the beginning, it's very hard to trace, well, where did this toxic, difficult data come from? So this is accountability and responsibility for things that go wrong is a huge both legislative and administrative issue at the moment.
Delan, do you want to say something about that?
Sure, I do. my personal view on it, and I think a lot of us in medicine view it this way, is that the AI is a tool. And so it would not be reasonable for your surgeon to say, well, I'm sorry things went wrong. My drill didn't work, or I used the wrong drill. You're responsible for the tool that you use. So I am responsible for the AI I use. And if I use an AI that has something within it that is faulty, I should have already vetted that AI, right? So the danger, or what ends up happening, is you need to probably use a few different AIs because they'll have different strengths. And so we're not yet at the point where I can form my own AI based on my own database, right? Hopefully we get to that point where I can feed it the 10,000 of my own diagnoses so that it thinks the way I would think, right? And then I can augment it with a database that Jason provides me with on these unique things that I can augment into my own database. I'm looking forward to that day. I don't know when that'll come. Hopefully that's within a decade, right? But at this particular time, for sure, the health practitioner is responsible for the answer that AI gives, right? So even if I was to decide to not look at all the green dots, there would have to be a certain percentage of green dotted files that I look at, and hope that the statistics would play out that it would be 1 in 10,000 that I would miss, right? But you still have to look at some of the normals. So I do think you're still responsible for the tools that you're using.
Jason, do you have anything to...
No, I don't think so. No.
Okay, thanks. Okay, well, thank you very much. Okay. The next question is, how will health professionals be AI educated and patient outcomes measured? We've sort of been talking around that, but do you want to take that one first?
So how will they be
going to be trained?
Yeah, I mean that's a tough one. It's happening in real time, so the training is like adapting a new program, if you will. Right? And so the training happens, and here's the risk. The training would end up happening very much by those who provide you with the programs, right? So at this particular point, it's early enough that it's happening amongst those who are experimenting with it. And so there's almost like a user group that would discuss. I'll tell you that in ophthalmology, that user group is so small that the three of us have spoken, right? And so, that's the problem, is it's that small, right? Hopefully it grows big enough that you will have groups at the various conferences and you'll share. But eventually it should get to the point where there is enough competition amongst the various products or producers of AI that it'll be challenging, and they'll all be selling you, like there'll be a sales script, and you will be at risk of using something that maybe doesn't live up to what the marketing has said it would. So it is going to be a dangerous path forward. There are going to be products that are going to be not as good as other products. I can already see it, in terms of how they've built certain AIs. For glaucoma, for example, they'll just base it on cup-to-disc ratio. They haven't taken into account any retinal nerve fiber layer analysis or ganglion cell analysis. So the ones that have done that, which we don't have access to right now in Canada, are going to be far more powerful than the ones that are just based on cup-to-disc ratio, right? I'm okay with that for now because it just means that the current ones are too sensitive. And I'd rather an AI that is too sensitive and I have the discretion to say I disagree. The problem will be if you unleash that AI into the hands of those who don't have any discretion and they're just going to count on the AI. That's where the problem will be, right? So you need to know what kind of a user you are, right? And so I don't know that there'll be any formal education in AI training, at least not in the next few years. It might end up happening in medical schools as ChatGPT and its various forms evolve. I mean, I know it's already happening at the elementary school level. Right? I'm seeing it in my kids' elementary school. They're not discouraging it per se. They have to figure out how to utilize it as a tool, right? So we'll see what the next 5 years hold.
Yeah, just as an additional thought, the AI was designed originally as a black box. The idea was that the operator need not know why a particular determination was made, and much of the mechanism behind it was not revealed to anyone that was purchasing it. When the GDPR, which is a European legislation, came out, they required explainable AI, and everyone within the AI community said this is impossible, you're requiring something that could not happen, because in fact the AI does not know why it made a particular decision, and there's no mechanism to determine why it decided that this was a cow versus a deer, etc. But with GDPR, there's now a number of technologies that are allowing us to determine where, in fact, did this decision happen? Where was the fork in the road that it was one thing, a benign tumor, say, versus a malignant tumor? But once the descriptions came out, there's a classic example, which is much quoted in 2017, where there was a determination of whether AI was used to determine whether a melanoma was benign or malignant. And when it was queried through these new tools, it was determined that the reason it chose something as malignant was because there was a ruler in the diagram. It had nothing to do with the actual issues with the photograph that the AI was given. And so we're now discovering many of these instances in looking at the explainability of the decisions that the AI makes. All to say that the developers don't know, the AI doesn't know. So training someone, a practitioner, in exactly what to watch out for within the AI is something that's going to take a while to come about. But there is, given the regulations, there is some work in this so that we have a better understanding of when will this work, when will it not, and where do the mistakes come from, and where does the determination come from. So training the actual practitioners, I think, is something that, a little bit further down the road, other than caution.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Jutta and Delan. Are there any questions? There's somebody in the audience back there?
Yes.
Can you get your mic? Yes, please.
Thank you, and greetings, folks. My name is Joe Jameson. I'm the CEO of the College of Optometrists of Ontario. So when the word regulation popped up, of course, my adrenaline popped up as well with that. I'm here with my colleague, Chad Andrews, who's part of the organization. So I'm glad you got around to training and what might that look like. And I appreciate that the competency level is changing every day. It's a rapidly emerging technology. So from the perspective of regulation, the first thing I'd say is it's important that regulators don't over-regulate this. That's probably the worst thing they can do. It is one of the presenters had a toolbox up. It's another tool to be able to address patient care. The responsibility of the regulator will be to make sure that practitioners are acting in scope, and while acting in scope, have the necessary knowledge, skill, and judgment so that we can attest to the public that the practitioner is safe, competent, and qualified, right? So what that looks like, we don't know yet. But there would definitely have to be some kind of requirement that the optometrist or ophthalmologist, I can only speak for optometrists, have achieved a certain level of competency before it's used. What does that look like? I don't know. The other piece that's interesting in my conversations with other CEOs of colleges with AI is, what might it look like someday if to not use AI actually becomes a conduct issue? In other words, if the technology has emerged as such that it has the ability to complement and detect that which the human can't, if a practitioner willfully chooses not to use it, is that compromising patient care because it's there? I'd be interested in your thoughts on that.
That's a good point, Joe. Thank you. I'm going to go out and do something that I don't think you should do as a moderator, but I'm going to put one of the audience in the hot seat. A couple of months ago, I was privileged to attend a leaders forum put on by the Canadian Association of Optometry. We're privileged here to have Francois Couillard with us, who's Executive Director of the Canadian Association of Optometry. I'd like to ask you, Francois, if you've heard anything today that stimulates your interest, or that you like to comment on, or where you see optometry fitting, anything or all of that. I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but I'm going to do it anyway.
That is highly illegal, but thanks. Yes, so optometrists across the country have been looking very closely at AI applications to optometry for several years. We've had leaders from across the country meet for 2 years in a row now for a couple of days, dedicated solely on applications of AI. So it's very exciting, it's very promising. As you mentioned, there's very few commercial applications right now in Canada, but you should know that the first AI medical application approved by the FDA was for optometry, actually. It was a screening tool for diabetic retinopathy. And similarly, the first reimbursed the first reimbursed AI application in medicine was for optometry. So it's out there. In Canada, there are a few innovators coming out with their own tools, and you mentioned one, but there's others. And some of them are deployed in more than 3 individuals. Some of them are deployed in groups of something like 50 clinics in Ontario, Quebec, and elsewhere. So optometrists believe there's a future for AI, and how do we prepare them? How do we make sure that they are aware of all the risks and opportunities and make use of the technology for the best benefit of their patients, the patients they serve, in a very responsible way is something that's totally top of mind. So I'm not sure if I'm answering your question. We're also trying to broaden the dialogue. So for example, we'll be presenting to the Insurers Association at their annual meeting in a month. And we're talking about the ability to scans of the retina to not only detect visual impairment, but a lot more. You can detect systemic issues. You can detect neurological issues. You can detect cardiovascular health. So suddenly now your local optometrist becomes an entry point into the broader healthcare system. And they can become a referral to other specialists. How does that work? That's, it's mind-boggling. But the technology is there. I myself was scanned in Australia in September and I was assessed my cardiovascular risk. So the technology is out there. It's approved by Australian authorities. It's there. Just a 2-minute scan of your retina, and you can get a score for your cardiovascular fitness. So it goes even beyond vision care. So I don't know if that answers your question, but...
Fantastic. Thank you very much. But you've created a great segue to the whole question of oculomics. Oculomics is a new word, it's a new field. It may not be a new field, but it's a new word that identifies the identification of systemic disease through looking in the eye. And AI provides us that as a potential down the road for, as Francois described, having a picture taken of your eye and deciding whether you have cardiovascular disease. I'd like to ask Delan if you wouldn't mind commenting a little on that.
Well, I think that's one of the more exciting things for sure, and I mean, I think that's where the future is going. We just need the products to be available here to actually start to deploy them. And I agree with the comment that was made about, regulation is a tough one, but inevitably, the more regulation you have, the less opportunity you have for innovation and for trial. Right? And we have something right now that requires it to be tried. And, you're going to need people to be using it probably while they're doing their job the way they usually have until they have sufficient ability to compare, right? And so in order to do that, it can't be too regulated. At the same time, if it's not regulated, then you have the risk of somebody just deploying it before it's ready and before, and putting us at risk for making misdiagnoses and I guess decisions that are inappropriate. So that's the tough balance. But I would agree that if I was to err, I would err on the side of less regulation at this particular time and more experimentation. I do definitely believe, given that we have AI that can tell you whether you're a male or a female and within a few years of what age you are, there's a lot of potential for using the eye as a window into the health of the body, right? We've known this for a long time. We already do that as it is right now, but to add on the depth of what an AI, I guess, database could do for you, I think is certainly the step in the correct direction.
Can I'm compelled to make a comment about regulations. I think there's different forms of regulations, and I think one of the things that people feel timid about is creating regulations regarding AI, because AI is so difficult to explain and is moving so fast, and there's this push for innovation. But I think in terms of regulations, if we regulate according to our values, we all have specific values, and certainly the example that I gave before, that AI should be explainable, is something that has actually spurred innovation as opposed to restricting the innovation. So rather than being techno-specific and saying thou shalt not use X, or this can't be used until X, I think if we design AI because of the speed with which it is progressing and with all of the things in our lives that it is affecting, I think there is a call for regulations that are associated with human values. The current values of AI are monetization. The companies that develop the AI want to make the biggest profit, so the AI is tuned to do that, which is dependent on our attention, and it's causing popularity because of economies of scale. Of course, it's biased towards the average or the typical, the largest customer base. So are those the values that we want this systemically deployed system to propagate, or are there other values that we then need to protect? And that's where we need new regulatory design that can address that.
Looks like we have a few questions in the audience. Would you?
Very, very quick question. Are you aware of any clinical trials about any of the technologies that you have done? Because before we go to regulation, we need to know whether the technology actually works or not. And Health Canada could, allow a technology here because it's safe. It doesn't mean it actually works. So, in terms of clinical trials, are they, or how do you look at them in terms of the spectrum from innovation to implementation in the clinic?
There are clinical trials, and they've been done in a variety of different countries, less so in Canada, and they're specific to the product that's being used, and there are clinical trials that have even been done in real world applications, and we're just getting into that part now. I don't know if when you were at Arvo, if you were looking at that volume of new work coming out. Yeah, so it is there. And it does work. Nothing's going to work 100%, and there are going to be outliers for which things don't work. But in general, the answer is yes, it does appear for especially the easier diagnoses, like diabetic retinopathy, macular degeneration. It appears to be pretty good. Glaucoma is harder. And then there are the more rare things, the more rare pathologies, which it's still not yet good at. But interestingly, it is somehow able to, there are algorithms out there that can actually determine whether or not what the gender is of a person, which is fascinating, right?
To answer your question, one additional thing is I haven't looked, but the FDA has a database, a registration database where all clinical studies have to be registered, and I'm sure you'll find a bunch of clinical studies on AI in that database. Deborah.
Yes, I'm holding the mic. It's Deborah Gold at Balance for Blind Adults. I wanted to quickly touch on something that ties together Jason's talk and Uda's talk. Comment first. We did a study at Balance several years ago, very small, blind people's use of Alexa and Google, the AI type talking machines that you have in your homes. And we had an interesting response from some people, not as many as it was an interesting response from both sides when we surveyed people's thoughts on privacy. One was, don't want any of that near me because there's a listening factor and I'm scared. That was more rare than blind people saying, don't care, willing to give up whatever privacy I may have for the independence. So Jason, if you could comment on that, and then maybe Uda as well, that'd be great.
I've definitely heard of cases where people, have that attitude about smart speaker, well, both attitudes. And you're right to be concerned. It's something that people need to think about because I'm not sure that I subscribe to the listening theory. All these speakers have wake words. They are, you do have to use the wake word to wake them up. People have done studies to see what data they're transmitting, if they are transmitting data outside of when those wake words are being used. And as from what I've heard, so far nothing is. That being said, they can be triggered. I've seen, I have smart speakers. I have both Alexa and Google Assistant, and I have, definitely had cases where they get triggered by mistake. Usually they're pretty good at stopping themselves when they realize they've been triggered by accident, but I certainly do. I certainly do hear people's concerns. But as you said, there are some considerations. How much are you concerned about that, and as opposed to how much are you concerned with the benefits they provide? Smart speakers are, I use them for reading audiobooks. I use them for, just checking facts like Google. The Google smart speakers are really good for this. Alexa, not so much. But the Google, you can, ask it for, nearby restaurants or other things like that. That can be super useful. But yeah, there definitely is a privacy consideration there.
I think privacy to some extent has been a bit of a red herring because it isn't really the privacy that is at issue. It's the abuse and misuse of that data. And so I think we need to move towards getting greater protections. Most people that require this in order to perform functions of daily life have already given up their privacy. So privacy is like putting up this massive wall once everything has already been released. There are some really egregious ways in which our privacy has been, or the data has been abused and misused. Without saying anything confidential, we've been working with law enforcement groups that are looking at abuse and misuse of data. So for one example is bad actors using the membership of a dementia and Alzheimer's group, the names and addresses, and targeting them specifically for financial fraud, because the understanding was, or that they would be most vulnerable to taking those fraudulent messages. Despite what we think about the things like Siri and Alexa and all of those listening apps, how many of you have noticed that all of a sudden advertisements come up that are related to something it's a little bit more pervasive than that. There is this tracking of you across platforms people are getting less connected. We're getting a lot more fragmented by the way that these systems are designed, but the systems are aggregating and they're getting more and more connected. So there's greater sharing of data about you so that increased monetization, increased attention. There's a popularity echo chamber, so it's not allowing you to see things that are dissonant to you or that are disliked by people like you. It's all, the recommender engines are turning us into a very sort of blinkered, winnowed view of the world. And the data that is aggregated across things increases that all the time. That's another sort of value, like what happened to surprise, what happened to serendipity, what happened to learning about people that are unlike you, or things that people unlike you like, etc. All of those, that is somewhat threatened by the use of data across all these platforms.
Just one sec, there's a microphone coming.
One of the things we've noticed with Alexa and the Google home speaker is that you can set the settings so that it will make a little noise when you ask, when it's listening. Yeah. And it's not perfect, but it's a step in the right direction. It's just kind of, oh, it's listening. And it could be just something that was said on the TV or the radio, or somebody coughed and it thinks, you said Google, but hey Google or whatever. And anyway, it's just one of those little things that you can do to help mitigate some of the privacy risks.
Okay. Thanks. I don't think that was a question. Okay.
That's a good observation.
Thanks. No, that's fine. I appreciate you saying it, but I don't think you're looking for an answer. Thank you. I'm going to get on to another question online, and then maybe we can come back to audience questions. There's a question that says, I would love to hear your thoughts on the issue which has been identified for AI chat, in that the information collected is based on things that happened in the past and doesn't take into account our needs in terms of planning for the future. Who would like to take that?
Yeah, I mean, all data is from the past, right? So the AI is instructed to amplify, accelerate the success patterns of the past. We pick the optimization metrics that are used, but unfortunately, most of the people that are making those choices, what are the optimization metrics, are not the end users, or not people that are, I mean, it is very much based upon marketing and a push towards attention and monetization. So sorry, no, I've lost my train of thought and the question. But Keith, can you repeat the question?
Okay. I might summarize the question. It says, okay, I'll repeat it. I would love to hear your thoughts on the issue which has been identified for AI chat, in that the information collected is based on things that happened in the past.
Yes, right. So the notion of potential, the notion of there being the opportunity, I mean, so you look at, I think it's more of a question for us and how the conventions that we are teaching the AI. For example, if we're looking at employment, there's the way that we've created our HR systems. We've set it up so there's a job description, and we want replaceable workers that fill that job description. Is there the possibility of changing it so we invest in humans and we invest in their potential? Similarly, I mean, I'm in an academic institution. We're looking, the admissions AI is looking for candidates who are going to match the pattern of successful students of the past. And then we are just simply repeating the past as opposed to thinking about, well, how is the future different and what are the different metrics that we need to use? So it puts a question to our own conventions, especially within education, since AI is now in the environment. All of those formulaic things that we are looking for in the admissions applications are the things that AI will be able to replace. So we're setting up our students with this in this collision course with AI. We're using the AI to find students that will and to teach skills, to develop curriculum that will be then replaced by AI. And that's a common theme in a number of things. How many of you have been following Uber, and how many of you are contributing your data to Uber? Certainly the Uber drivers are contributing their data to Uber. Think about what Uber is thinking it'll do with that data. It's going to replace the drivers. So you're training the Uber to replace the drivers. I think there's bigger questions regarding the types of conventions that we have in place, and AI is a really good mirror of those conventions.
A quick comment on that?
Please.
Yeah, so it's Jason. So just related to the sort of AI using stale data, I just wanted to go back to that for a second. So that was... still is true to some extent, but it was a lot more true with the older AI models that GPT and some other companies, or OpenAI and some other companies were doing. So a lot of times the data was 6 months, possibly 2 years out of date. With the newest AI models, it can actually search the internet now. So it can pull in and summarize data from websites sort of in real time. There's a service called perplexity.ai that is using it's sort of like an AI search engine. So you can type in a question and it will actually go out to the internet, find relevant information, give you a summary of it, and it actually gives you footnotes that you can click on, so you can actually check its sources. So you can click on where it got the information from and sort of double check it if you need to. Yeah, perplexity.ai.
Yeah, the degree of the past is changing, but still not the potential for the future.
Yeah. I still think if you're going to project the future, you have to base it on something. So the only thing you can base it on is what's already happened. So, okay. The next question is very quick for Jason. Is are the Meta Ray-Ban glasses available in Canada?
Yes.
Thank you. Moving on.
I bought these directly. Where did I get these? I bought these from Best Buy. You can go to Meta. You can go to Meta Ray-Ban or Ray-Ban. They'll sell them to you. Ray-Ban stores sell them. They're kind of all over.
Okay, I think we're done with online questions. Is anything else in the audience? Yeah. It's the gentleman with the blue shirt. Okay.
Oh, hi. Am I on? First of all, thank you so much, CCB, for doing this conference. It's been really educational and just a lovely opportunity to gather with people with similar interests and concerns. Jason, can you just give me an idea what's the difference between the Ray-Ban glasses and the Envision glasses? There's a big cost difference and just functionality. How do they compare?
There's a huge cost difference, and I would say the Ray-Ban the Envision glasses do give you a little more ease of use. They're designed for somebody who's blind or partially sighted, whereas the Ray-Ban glasses aren't. And you do get, slightly more actually quite a bit more detailed visual descriptions, sort of right off the bat. You don't have to query them. They are based on Google Glass, which actually is a discontinued technology at this point. But was a very expensive technology, what they're based on. So, there is a difference, and there is a difference as far as the amount of data you get from them. But is it a $3,000 difference? I'm not sure. But I mean, all these glasses, they're all adding new features, right? So Envision AI may come up with something, and they do great things. I'm not trying to disparage them. I just mean that there's other possibly more mainstream glasses that will do a lot of the same things that it does.
And there's several announcements regarding releases coming up in the next little while. Other less pricey entries into this particular market.
Yeah, the Celeste, I was mentioning the Celeste classes. I believe they're $150 to start off, and then $50 a month. And you just sort of pay to keep using the glasses. So that's a much more attainable entry point for people. I have not tried them though, so I can't really comment on them.
Jason, is there any other technology that you would have liked to talk about if I'd given you more time? Anything that's coming down that you think is a pie in the sky that might happen?
I don't know. I mean, I didn't. Well, I won't say I this whole real-time video description thing. I won't say I didn't see it coming. I did. I didn't see it coming this fast. I didn't think we were going to see it as quickly as I think we're going to see it. So I'm really curious to see where that whole thing goes once we get our hands on it.
There's a type of technology that is a lot of people are investing in now, which is on-device intelligence.
Yes.
So that you don't need to be connected to the cloud. The data doesn't sit on the cloud, and it can focus more on your own data set as opposed to the average data set. So that's something that's very promising that is emerging now.
Mike?
Jason, I think everybody would like to hear the story about Metrolink and Go, which you did for the Go. I think people would enjoy the story.
Sure. I mean, it's as I said, it's not really related to AI per se, but basically what it boils down to. I mentioned earlier that I built an app for Go Transit. Well, not for Go Transit. I built it for myself. But it's based on Go Transit data, Metrolink's data, and what this does is allows me to very quickly, when I'm at Union Station, for example, pull up Union Station departures. I want the Lakeshore East line, and it gives me the data for the next 2 hours. And if there's platforms announced, it tells me what platform it is. So I don't need to obviously look at the onboard, the overhead screens, which I can't use. And since I'm at Union Station enough, I know where the platforms are for the most part. And so as long as I know where I'm going, I can get there. And it was more of a thing that I built for myself. Like I said, for anybody interested, it's accessgo.ai. Accessgo.ca. Sorry. AI on the brain. Accessgo.ca. And it's a site that I built for myself, and I was frustrated one day about not having access to the data, and I'm like, I bet I could fix this, and because I've got some development experience. I'm not a professional developer, don't want to be, but I dabble in it, and so I was able to get access to their sort of data stream, and pull information out of it, and it's sort of, accessibility. Just sort of building your own accessibility solutions when nothing else exists, or what exists is extremely inefficient, because they have a way you can do this, but it's really, really inefficient. And by the time I got through and got the data I wanted, I'd have missed 2 trains. So so not related to AI, but thanks, Mike, for letting me blow my own horn about it. But yeah, it was a fun project to build.
Is the AI detector as good at detecting early rare genetic conditions such as Leber's, Stargardt, some of the others? Or do they not have enough statistical base yet on that sort of thing to make a reliable delineation?
The majority of the AI products are not geared towards the more rare conditions. However, I'm pretty sure I have heard of one that is looking at that. So, but it's probably out of an institution, like out of an academic institution. But I don't know. I'm not sure. I shouldn't comment on that. So I would say in general, the answer is no. It's not going to find the more rare conditions.
Thank you. I have a question for the audience. For the pharmaceutical industry in the audience, how is the pharma industry using AI? Would anybody like to stand up and speak about it? Are you using it to design your clinical trials around? Are you using it as a diagnostic tool? Is there anything within the pharma industry that's related to AI? Nobody? A bunch of wimps. Okay. Sorry, folks. Okay. With that, I'd like to thank our presenting sponsors once again: AbbVie, AMI, Apellis, Astellas, Bausch & Lomb, Bayer, Biogen, Johnson & Johnson, Macumira, Roche, Specsavers, and Via Rail. I'd like to particularly thank everybody involved with the organizing of this meeting. First and foremost, this was Mike Balajan's meeting. I'd like to acknowledge Mike and all the organization for coming. And then all of the CCB people. I'm not going to name you because I'll miss somebody. And people who've been consulting, like Willie, Willie's a, what do you call yourself, Willie? A ski jumper. Willie's an Olympic ski jumper, but he's been filming for us for a number of years. And a number of other people have been involved. Thank you to everybody for participating. And I'd like to thank the audience, both here and at home, for joining us today. I think it's been a really interesting discussion. And last but by definitely no means least, thank you, Jason, Delan, and Jutta, for your incredible presentations and your wonderful discussion. Thank you.